My name is Cameron, and I was raised in a star's shadow. Lily, my elder sister, was that star. There were always a lot of people in our house, uncles, aunts, cousins, you name it. Attracted by the prospect of my mom's delectable barbecue and the opportunity to watch Lily sing, they would swarm into our backyard like ants to a picnic. Our backyard, with its well-manicured lawn and large oak trees serving as the ideal background, seemed a lot like a stage. Mom would run about making sure everyone had a drink in hand while Dad fired up the grill, filling the air with the aroma of sizzling meat and charcoal. Lily, sweetie. With a voice that broke through the commotion, Aunt Marge would scream out, "Why don't you give us a little song?" And all eyes would suddenly go to my sister. With a naughty twinkle in her eye and her golden locks bouncing, Lily would leap onto a chair. She would theatrically clear her throat, and then magic. She would croon, giving her best Celine Dion imitation, "My heart will go on and on." The grown-ups would go crazy, applause and clapping, as if they were witnessing a live performance. With delight, Mom and Dad would grin, with Dad frequently removing a tear from his eye. I would be out to the side, attempting to disappear into the bushes in the meanwhile. My voice sounded like a cat being strangled every time I tried to sing, not that I didn't want to participate. And first, ignore it. My lips would tangle with the words, making me flushed and unable to speak clearly. My family have whispered to me that I'm really different from my sister. Not just the family members were involved. Mom and Dad made it obvious who was the highlight of the group. I was left on my own as Lily was rushed from dancing sessions to singing lessons to painting workshops. Not that it bothered me too much. The worn-out books that covered our shelf gave me comfort. Great Aunt Maggie was the only one who appeared to understand me. I would be hiding behind the garage or up in the treehouse, nose deep in a book, when she would discover me. She would settle down next to me and ask, "What adventure are you on today, Cameron?" I would gaze up, appreciative of the disruption. "Oh, I was just reading about ancient Egypt," I would respond, pointing to my most recent discovery's cover. Maggie's eyes would sparkle as she nodded. "Girl, you have a sound head on your shoulders. Never listen to someone who says otherwise." Those times I spent with Maggie were like a breath of fresh air. She didn't demand me to be someone I wasn't, or to act. I could just be Cameron with her, the shy, bookish girl who liked the solitude of pen and paper more than the hubbub of family get-togethers. Even though I treasured such times, being the child who was ignored still hurt. My parents would shower Lily with praise and presents whenever she conquered a new song or received an accolade. She could have the newest technology, stylish clothes, or anything else she wanted. And me. I received hand-me-downs and frustrated sighs. My haven became school. I wasn't quite Miss Popularity, but in the course I was able to settle in. I wasn't going to sit there and let the teachings pass through my mind. No, I was committed to understanding all of the information provided by the professors. "Mrs. Thompson," I would say quietly but firmly after class, "will you please repeat that explanation of mitosis? It wasn't fully clear to me." She would grin, clearly appreciating my curiosity. "Naturally, Cameron. How about we discuss it together?" I would ask a teacher for book recommendations if she didn't have the time. My rucksack soon began to overflow with additional reading material. I used to stay up late reading such books, wanting to become an expert in every field. Your efforts have paid off. I was at the top of my class by the time I started high school. I excelled at anything for once in my life. I even made a few bookish pals who tolerated my reserved demeanor. As graduation drew near, Lily Central took over our home. Her mother was always assisting her to put together her portfolio for some posh college's advertising and PR program. "Oh, honey, this campaign idea is perfect. When Mom saw Lily's work, she would get very excited. "You're so talented." I would close my eyes, go to my room, and immerse myself in my work. However, something inside of me gave out one evening over yet another family meal focused on Lily's college plans. I exclaimed, "I'm going to college too. I want to study management." There was an unbearable quiet for a while. Then they all started laughing, which shocked and pained me. Mom responded, blotting away her tears, "Oh, sweetie, we don't have money for that. After graduation, a job will need to be obtained. Simply put, you lack your sister's talent." It seemed as if someone had smacked me. But I'm the top student in my class. My cheeks scarlet with humiliation and rage, I mumbled, "I get straight A's." After storming up to my room, I slammed my report card onto the table. Their surprised eyes widened as they all leaned in to have a closer look. Dad scratched his head and murmured, "Well, I'll be damned." "When did this happen?" "It's been happening for years." I spit out, "Not that any of you ever noticed." At least Mom had the grace to appear embarrassed. "Cameron, we had no idea." But Dad interrupted her. "Look, nothing is altered by it. Our whole savings has gone into Lily's schooling. Cameron, there is nothing left for you." I apologize, but it is the reality. After graduation, you'll start working at my cousin Frank's restaurant. I turned and ran, ignoring their calls. I sprinted up the stairs into my room, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. As I collapsed onto my bed, sobs racking my body, I felt something inside me harden. Fine, I thought, my hands clenching into fists. If they won't help me, I'll find another way. I'll show them all what Cameron can do. The next few months were a blur. Lily headed off to college, her departure marked by tearful goodbyes and proud parental embraces. Meanwhile, I threw myself into my studies with renewed vigor, determined to graduate at the top of my class. During this time, I found myself spending more and more time with Great Aunt Maggie. Her small cozy house became my refuge from the tension at home. One afternoon, as we sat in her sunlit kitchen sipping tea, she asked a question I'd been dreading. "So Cameron," she said, her kind eyes fixed on me, "what are your plans after graduation?" I stared into my teacup, fighting back tears. "Hi, I don't know, Aunt Maggie. Mom and Dad won't help me with college. They say there's no money left after paying for Lily's education." Maggie was quiet for a moment, then reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Cameron, dear, I've got some savings. I'd like to give them to you for college. You're smart as a whip, and I'll be damned if I let that brain of yours go to waste." The reality of her words hit me like a tidal wave. I burst into tears, overwhelmed by her generosity, and the sudden realization that my dreams weren't dead after all. "Thank you," I sobbed, throwing my arms around her. "Thank you so much, Aunt Maggie." The months flew by, and before I knew it, I was walking across the stage at graduation, diploma in hand. As I scanned the crowd, I saw Aunt Maggie beaming at me. My parents were there too, looking proud but uncomfortable. That evening, as I pored over college brochures, Mom walked in. "Cameron, honey," she said, her voice syrupy sweet, "your father's cousin Frank called. He's got a waitressing job for you at his restaurant. Isn't that exciting?" I took a deep breath. "Actually, Mom, I won't be needing that job. I'm going to college." Dad appeared in the doorway, frowning. "And how exactly do you plan to pay for that?" "Aunt Maggie is helping me," I said, my chin held high. "She's giving me her savings for tuition." The shocked silence that followed was almost comical. Then, to my disbelief, Dad's face turned red with anger. "Absolutely not," he bellowed. "If Maggie's got money to spare, it should go to Lily. She needs a car for her job in advertising after she graduates next year. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? I spat. This is my chance to get an education, to make something of myself. Don't be selfish, Cameron, Mom chimed in. Your sister needs that money more than you do. No, I said, my voice shaking but firm. This is my money now, and I'm using it for college. End of discussion. From that moment on, life at home became unbearable. My parents either ignored me completely or snapped at me over the smallest things. The tension was suffocating. After a particularly nasty argument, I called Aunt Maggie in tears and told her everything. "Pack your bags, sweetheart," she said without hesitation. "You're moving in with me." The next day, I stuffed everything I owned into a cab and drove away, watching my childhood home shrink in the rearview mirror. As I pulled up to Aunt Maggie's house, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The summer flew by in a whirlwind of preparation, and before I knew it, I was stepping onto the campus of State University. Thanks to my stellar grades and Aunt Maggie's generosity, I'd gotten into the management program I'd always dreamed of. On my first day of classes, I felt like I was floating on air as I sat in my introduction to business lecture, drinking in every word. I couldn't help but think, I made it. I'm really here. Meanwhile, Lily was starting her senior year at her fancy college. I hadn't heard much from her or my parents since I'd moved out, but I tried not to let it bother me. I was too busy reveling in my newfound freedom and the excitement of college life. But then, about a month into the semester, Aunt Maggie called me. "Cameron, dear," she said, her voice hesitant. "I think you should sit down for this." My heart raced as she filled me in on the family drama I'd missed. Apparently, Lily had shown up at home out of the blue, announcing she had dropped out of college. The reason? She was pregnant. According to Aunt Maggie, Lily had been flippant about the whole thing. "Oh, don't worry," she'd said, tossing her hair. "The baby's father is loaded. We'll be getting married soon." But the story didn't end there. It turned out Lily's boyfriend wasn't as committed as she thought. When he found out she'd been sleeping with his friend too, all hell broke loose. Now they didn't even know who the father was. Aunt Maggie sighed. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process it all. Part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. The golden child had fallen from her pedestal. But mostly, I just felt sad for Lily and the mess she'd gotten herself into. The saga continued over the next few months. Aunt Maggie kept me updated on all the gossip from the family gatherings. I no longer attended when Lily's baby was born. A DNA test confirmed her boyfriend was indeed the father, but instead of the fairy tale wedding Lily had envisioned, he simply agreed to pay child support. The final blow came when Lily, desperate for work, took a job as a waitress at Uncle Frank's restaurant, the very job my parents had tried to foist on me. As I hung up the phone, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. There was a small, petty part of me that wanted to gloat, to rub my success in my family's faces, but mostly I just felt a profound sense of gratitude for where I was and how far I'd come. Years flew by in a blur of lectures, exams, and late-night study sessions. Before I knew it, I was walking across the stage at graduation, my hard-earned management degree clutched tightly in my hand. As I scanned the crowd, I saw Aunt Maggie beaming at me, tears of pride in her eyes. Thanks to my top grades and glowing recommendations from my professors, I landed a job as a manager at the Gilded Fork, one of the most prestigious restaurants in the city. The salary was more than I'd ever dreamed of, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly successful. With my first paycheck, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I marched into the electronics store and bought the latest smartphone for Aunt Maggie. Her face lit up when I presented it to her. "Oh, Cameron," she gasped, turning the sleek device over in her hands. "This is too much." I grinned, already pulling out my own phone. "Not at all. Now let me show you how to use it." Over the next few weeks, I taught Aunt Maggie the ins and outs of social media. She took to it like a duck to water, especially loving Facebook's video feature. Soon her page was filled with clips of her garden, her cat, and her infamous apple pie in various stages of creation. I'd watch her videos during my lunch breaks, always making sure to leave a comment or a like. It was our way of staying connected, even when work kept me busy. One day, as I was preparing for the dinner rush, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, surprised to see my mother's name on the screen. We hadn't spoken in years. "Cameron." Her voice was hesitant. "We were hoping you might come over to talk." After a long pause, I agreed. That Sunday, I found myself standing on the porch of my childhood home, my hand hovering over the doorbell. Before I could press it, the door swung open. "Cameron," my mother pulled me into a tight hug. "Oh, sweetie, it's so good to see you." Inside, I found my father, Lily, and a toddler I assumed was my niece. The atmosphere was tense, but not hostile, like I'd feared. "You look good, kiddo," Dad said, his voice gruff but warm. "We hear you're doing well for yourself." I nodded, still wary. "I am. I'm a manager at the Gilded Fork now." Their eyes widened at the name of the restaurant. Mom cleared her throat. "That's wonderful, dear. Actually, that's part of why we wanted to talk to you." Over the next hour, they apologized for how they treated me, admitting they'd been wrong to dismiss my potential. Then came the real reason for the reunion. "Cameron," Mom said, glancing at Lily. We were wondering if you might be able to help Lily get a job at your restaurant." I looked at my sister, bouncing her daughter on her knee. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'll see what I can do," I said finally. "No promises, but I'll ask." True to my word, I spoke to Mr. Reeves, the restaurant owner, about Lily. To my surprise, he agreed to give her a shot as an administrator. Lily started the following week. I watched her closely, half expecting her to fail or cause drama, but to my shock, she excelled. She was punctual, efficient, and the customers loved her charm. As the weeks passed, I found myself relaxing around her. We weren't best friends by any means, but we developed a cordial working relationship. Just when I thought I had everything figured out, the universe decided to throw me another curveball, this time a positive one. Mr. Reeves called me into his office one day. My heart raced, wondering if I'd done something wrong. Instead, he grinned at me and said, "Cameron, how would you like to help me expand the business?" Before I knew it, I was overseeing the opening of not one, but 3 new restaurants. My days became a whirlwind of staff meetings, menu tastings, and number crunching. It was exhausting, exhilarating, and everything I'd ever dreamed of. The promotion came with a significant pay bump, and suddenly I found myself with more money than I knew what to do with. That's when the calls from my parents started. At first, it was just small things. "The roof is leaking," Mom would say, her voice hesitant. "We were wondering if you might be able to help out a little." I was surprised at how good it felt to say yes, to be able to solve their problems with a simple transfer of funds. It started with the roof, then it was a new water heater, and before long, I was funding a complete home renovation. As their financial situation improved, thanks to my monthly allowance, the infamous family party started up again. But this time when I attended, things were different. "Have you heard about Cameron's latest project?" Mom would gush to the relatives. "She's opening a new restaurant downtown. We're so proud of her." I'd catch Lily's eye across the room, and she'd give me a small smile. She was doing well too, having been promoted to head administrator at the Gilded Fork. My girls, Dad would say, an arm around each of us, both of them making their old man proud. Part of me wanted to be bitter, to remind them of how they treated me before, but a larger part reveled in the warmth of their approval, something I'd craved for so long. As I drove home that night, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. Finally, after all these years, I had what I'd always wanted: success in my career and the love and appreciation of my family. I was the golden child now, but better than that, I was my own woman, standing on my own 2 feet. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon when my world came crashing down around me. I was scrolling through Facebook, sipping my coffee, when I saw that Aunt Maggie had posted a new video. It was from one of the family gatherings I'd missed due to work commitments. Smiling, I clicked play, expecting to see the usual scenes of laughter and merriment. What I saw instead made my blood run cold. There in living color were my parents, their faces flushed with alcohol and self-righteousness. Mom was gesticulating wildly, her voice slurred but unmistakable. Aunt Cameron, that ungrateful little freeloader, she was saying, "She barely gives us anything. We're not made of money, you know." Dad chimed in, his face red. "That's right. We're doing just fine, thanks to our Lily. She's the one keeping that fancy restaurant afloat. Cameron just rides on her coattails." The video continued with various relatives nodding along, some even adding their own criticisms. Lily sat in the corner, looking uncomfortable but not contradicting them. As the video ended, I sat there stunned. How could they, after everything I'd done for them, all the money I'd given them, how could they turn around and say such awful, untrue things? With shaking hands, I scrolled down to the comments. There I saw a stream of messages from my parents. "Maggie, delete this video right now. You had no right to post this. Take it down immediately." But Aunt Maggie's response made me burst into tears. I don't know how to delete videos, and even if I did, I wouldn't. It's time everyone saw the truth about how you treat Cameron. She's the one supporting you, and this is how you repay her kindness. Shame on you both. I sat there for what felt like hours, replaying the video, reading and rereading the comments. The betrayal cut deep, reopening wounds I thought had long since healed. Finally, I picked up my phone and dialed Aunt Maggie's number. "Oh, Cameron, dear," she said when she answered, her voice full of sympathy. "I take it you've seen the video." "Yeah," I croaked, my voice raw from crying. "I can't believe it, Aunt Maggie. How could they?" I could hear the anger in her voice as she replied, "They've always been like this, Cameron. You just hadn't been around to see it. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but maybe it's for the best. You deserve to know the truth." We talked for hours, with Maggie comforting me as I cycled through shock, anger, and grief. As night fell, I made a decision. I'm cutting them off, I told Aunt Maggie, my voice firm despite the pain in my heart. No more money, no more help. They made their bed, now they can lie in it. The days following the video revelation were some of the hardest of my life. My phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls from my parents, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Their words, so cruel and untrue, played on a loop in my mind. Finally, after a week of silence, I sent them a brief text. "I've seen the video. I know what you really think of me. Don't contact me again. The money stops now." Their responses came flooding in immediately. At first, they were apologetic. "Cameron, sweetie, we're so sorry. We didn't mean any of it. Please forgive us." But as the days passed and I maintained my silence, their tune changed. "We're your parents. You owe us." Each message twisted the knife deeper, but I stood firm. I'd given them chance after chance, and they'd thrown it all back in my face. It was time to break the cycle. Lily surprisingly stayed out of it. At work, she was the model employee, efficient and professional. If she harbored any resentment over the loss of our parents' financial support, she didn't show it. Our interactions remained cordial but distant. After a staff meeting one day, she informed me, "I'm not taking sides. That is between the two of you." I nodded, grateful for her objectivity, but a part of me wanted she would defend me. However, I saw that she had her own child to consider. As the weeks stretched into months, I discovered that I was depending a lot on Aunt Maggie. Our Sunday video chats turned into my favorite part of the week. She would regale me with tales from her garden or her most recent baking endeavor, giving my chaotic existence a much-needed dose of normalcy. When concerns began to creep in, she would reassure me, "You're doing the right thing, Cameron." Avoid allowing them to control you any longer. I was surprised to hear from other relatives as well. I received a touching note from my cousin Sarah, who had always been friendly to me at family get-togethers. I watched the film. "Cameron, I want you to know how wonderful I believe you are. You are an inspiration, what you've accomplished, and how you've benefited everyone. Never listen to anyone who suggests different." Dad's brother, Uncle Bob, contacted me out of the blue. "Kid, I've watched you mature into this amazing woman. If your parents don't recognize how unique you are, they are idiots. Your family is on your side. Recall that." These encouraging remarks were like a salve to my hurting heart. It dawned on me that although my parents had passed away, I had been blessed with a family who valued my true self. I was summoned into Mr. Reeves's office as the year came to an end. I was anxious as I entered the room, wondering if the family turmoil had influenced how well I had done at work. Rather, he grinned widely and announced, "Cameron, I'm retiring next year. I would want you to become the group CEO for the restaurants." I was stunned into stillness as I stood there. At last, I stumbled over the words, "Are you sure?" With sparkling eyes, he nodded. Never in my life have I felt more certain about anything. I know you deserve it, Cameron. It is because of you that this firm has prospered. It's time for you to assume control. I came to the deep realization that the young girl who had been disregarded and undervalued had grown into a lady who had exceeded everyone's expectations, including her own, as I left his office, my brain whirling with possibilities.